Hi there, and welcome to another interview. Today I've got the fabulous Meghan with me, and I want to ask Meghan to tell us a little bit about her journey. So, hi, Meghan.
Hi, so nice to be doing this with you. So yeah, I guess I've been following a carnivore diet for 4 years, just over 4 years now. And for me, it has been super transformative. It's been healing. It's brought all these wonderful benefits because just before I started this way of eating, I was carrying an extra 100 pounds, so 45 kilos of extra weight on me. Yeah. I was dealing with horrible fibromyalgia. It happened following a spinal disc injury in 2014. But within a year of developing the fibro symptoms, I started having to use crutches, which quickly became needing to be pushed in a wheelchair, which led to me by 2016, I had to stop working. The brain fog was so bad I couldn't work any longer. I was in a wheelchair. Not in the house, but to get around. I had one of those bed rails just to help me get in and out of bed. I had a swivel bath seat for years. I had a care person come in 5 days a week to help me bathe and dress because it hurt too much to do it on my own. And most of the time, my husband was out on the road traveling for his work. So if he'd been home, he would have helped, but he was away for work a lot of the time at that point. So come, 2020, I had that extra 45 kilos on me. Knew my fibro was already at the point where it was just so bad. All the pain medications were kind of slightly dulling it, but was not really making a huge impact. Unfortunately, I was on the maximum allowed dosages of gabapentin and cocodamol. I was on antidepressants. I was, dealing with severe anxiety. I was struggling with bulimia, which I'd suffered with for years, but it just got even worse during that time. And I already had IBS, which was exceptionally bad with all the medications. And I found out in March, I always laugh at the timing, but on March 19th, I'd finally been in to see a lipid doctor who confirmed I not only had hypothyroidism, which I suspected for years, but the doctors kept saying, no, your TSH is fine. Don't worry about it. So I had hypothyroidism, and I also found out that my triglycerides at that point were almost double the upper limit of what they deem as acceptable because of all the good, healthy fruit I was eating. I was eating 5 to 10 servings of fruit a day, thinking I'm doing good things, right? It's healthy. I'm supposed to eat this. And so I had all of that happening. And then, of course, 2 days later, we were all shut down for COVID. So I reached a point for a couple of months of, we might die tomorrow, so I'm gonna eat whatever I like. I'm gonna enjoy the Indian takeaways. I'm gonna enjoy all the everything that was, I think my husband and I, everybody knew where our house was. I mean, like most of us, but all the takeaway people knew exactly where our house was located. They didn't have to look it up. They knew where we were because we were ordering stuff constantly. And in May of that year, I reached the point where I was just so inflamed and I was in so much pain and I was so uncomfortable. And I weighed more at that time, at least on the scale, than I ever weighed through either of my two pregnancies. And I looked about 6 months pregnant, and I felt awful, and I was tired and I didn't want to be there anymore. And so we sort of said, well, okay, I would never have said it, but my husband said, hey, babe, we put on a bit of weight. They're letting us loose this summer. Let's do this together. Here's a book that his sister recommended. I helped her with her Hashimoto's. I'm like, he's like, tell you what, you read the book, you tell me what to do, and I'll eat it. So we did. And we started on a paleo approach, which worked great for him. But with all of my issues with the IBS, all the nuts and all the green smoothies and everything else just made it even worse for me. And so he ended up, I think in 2 weeks, he lost close to 13 pounds and I gained 6. And
Wow.
I thought, that's it. This is not helping. There has to be something else. I can't do the nuts. I can't do seeds. I can't do legumes, in spite of being told by various GPs, oh, get the fiber in, get the fiber is good for IBS. It is absolutely not.
Yeah.
It was horrible for me. And then I remembered my sister-in-law had done keto 5 years ago before that to help with her arthritis and her psoriasis. And I thought, well, let me look into this. And so I found all the videos I could. I found Dr. Barry and watched all of his videos, and just everything I could get into me, every knowledge I could grab about keto. How do I do it? What does it mean? And how do I start? I watched everything that I could. And then I decided I was at the point where I was finally sick and tired of feeling so sick and sore and tired. And I was actually willing to do something about it. So I started keto and did that for a couple of weeks. And I did start to have some relief. I didn't feel quite so bloated, but had this light bulb moment. One of Dr. Barry's videos where he talked about, if you're having gut issues, if you deal with IBS, then you may want to consider eliminating all plants, because that is probably what's aggravating your situation. And I thought, I always knew that plants were an issue for me, have always been. But I just figured, well, I'm supposed to eat them though, because everyone says 5 or 10 a day. So I guess I have to eat them anyway. So I'll just keep eating the plants. And then I realized I don't need the plants. In fact, I should run the opposite direction from fiber. And once I got out all the plants, that's when I started to see the most improvement and the most change. And within the first, I ended up losing, when I went carnivore, I lost 7 or 8 pounds the first week. I've never, lifetime of eating disorder and restrictive eating, never lost that much weight at once, ever. And I thought, okay, well, this is, I think, the key. Let me keep doing this. And so after the first 6 months, I was down 45 kilos. I didn't even have to work at it. I wasn't trying necessarily to just lose the weight at that speed. It was just getting all the garbage out. The body just went, oh, hallelujah. Just here, let's get rid of all the inflammation. Let's get all the stuff out of you that you don't need anymore. And it was amazing. But what I noticed, yes, the weight, but more significantly was after the first couple of months, my brain fog was significantly lifted. And I started to feel like my old self, which I had not felt for about 6 years at that point. And I could actually start remember conversations again. So I joke about it now with my husband and with my sons. It's sort of, hey, Mom, you remember that time when I asked you something? No. And I literally couldn't recall what happened 5 minutes ago. Rereading books because I forgot how they ended, or I could watch numerous films multiple times because I couldn't always remember, or I thought they were different movies. So finally getting that brain back was like, oh my goodness, there she is. There she is after all this time, finally. And it was just amazing. And so from that point forward, I just started healing a little bit every day. And it's one of those things where you don't always see the healing out on the outside, but you're healing on the inside. And I just noticed that my gut started to get better and better every day. I started to have a little bit less inflammation, a little bit less pain every day, where my medications felt like they were actually helping. I still used the wheelchair for several years after that because I was still getting out the last of the inflammation, but I didn't need crutches around the house. I didn't need anyone to help me with bathing or getting dressed. I could start doing that on my own. And those are things I never thought I would take for granted. But when I suddenly got those little bits back, it was like, oh my gosh, just realizing how important they were. And yet they're relatively small things, but it was such a huge deal to be like, yeah, no, I can shower on my own. I can get dressed on my own. I don't need someone to help me with that any longer. And just continue to get better and better, and little bits of healing all the time over the next few years. And I did eventually reach the point where I had to accept the fact that I was diagnosed with being lactose intolerant in 2007, but I love my cheese and I enjoy a nice cappuccino. And so for me, I was like, no, I'm the exception. I react, but it's not that bad. It's just a little cheese. It's just milk in my coffee. Oh, come on. I've given up everything else. And of course, I'm not the exception. And when I finally got rid of the dairy, I noticed a big difference as well. I noticed a lot less headaches. That's when the arthritis pain really started to disappear, just further healing with my gut. So I avoid that now pretty much. Every once in a while, I'll go back and think, oh, I've healed enough. Normally I'll just have a decaf Americano. That's it. That's all I have. But every once in a while, I think, you can handle a cappuccino today. It's been months. I'll be fine. And then, of course, I'm reminded, no, I don't do super well with it. So unfortunately, I don't know that any amount of healing is going to change that. But when I keep the dairy out, I feel great. My rosacea's in remission, if you will, so it doesn't flare up when I have dairy, when I have overly cured or smoked meats. Like I can't do deli meat, salami, anything like that, because it makes my rosacea break out, unfortunately. So those little tweaks I've learned along the way of things I definitely do well with, things I definitely have to avoid. May of last year in 2023, actually I should go back a step. So March of last year, my husband and I were on holiday. We were in Porto, in Portugal, for 5 days for our anniversary. And I just decided at that point, you know what? I am so tired of needing the wheelchair. I don't want to have to use it anymore. I, didn't suffer paralysis, just chronic pain, thankfully. And I thought, you know what? That's it. One of these days, I'm going to get up and I'm going to start walking, and I'm not going to use the wheelchair anymore because I'm so tired of having to be pushed or having to get it out of the garage. And I didn't know how long it would take or when I would get there, but I was determined that I was going to be able to walk again. And one of the things I had to do, though, was see how I did without all the high levels of pain medication, because it's so hard to tell if you're actually injured or you are having real pain when you're on all of these medications. So I thought, I'm going to just very, 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 very slowly start cutting back, weaning myself off. And so as of May last year, I'm completely medication free. No thyroid medication, no antidepressants, no statins, no pain meds, nothing, like absolutely nothing. And as of October last year, I've not used my wheelchair once. I actually managed to usually walk a few miles every day. Sometimes it's to town, sometimes it's out with the dogs, whatever I'm up to that day. But when people ask me, I got some people that come on my channel or that I work with as a coach, and they're like, well, I have fibromyalgia too, and am I going to have it forever? And I get to say to them, no, you don't necessarily have to deal with the symptoms forever. I don't know if the doctors would ever say clinically I'm cured, but I have had 0 symptoms and flare-ups in over a year. So, which is incredible. So that's from eating this way, getting all the inflammatory garbage out, and then just giving myself a chance to heal. So to me, that's amazing, because if you'd asked me 10 years ago, if I ever thought I'd be able to walk on my own, if I ever thought I'd be off medication, I would have said, you are nuts. And that will never, ever happen, because a doctor told me it wasn't possible. So sometimes and my respect for all doctors, because they have far more education than I do, but the good ones will admit they don't know everything about everything. And it doesn't mean that you have to live with that chronic pain forever. So.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, and it is good to be magnanimous and also put it into a right perspective. If a doctor says to you, I've never seen fibromyalgia reverse, that's because they probably haven't. And that's because of the world they're in. Many people that I deal with wouldn't go to a doctor now. They just do their own research and get better because they think it's nutrition or whatever. And of course, it's not them really as individuals, it's the system, isn't it? I mean, that's the problem. The system isn't open to... they pay lip service to lifestyle changes, but then on the next page, it'll always be medications. It's never really lifestyle changes. So of all the things that you had to suffer there, what would you say was the most significant thing that you thought came from this way of eating?
I think the most significant was getting through the fibromyalgia, because even though I've suffered with anxiety for years, and I've always had some level of depression, eating disorder, like all of that's been there for a very long time, but I still kind of just, you push through and you get on with life. But with the fibromyalgia, the symptoms flared up so significantly and so quickly that it just completely changed our way of life, because here I was working a full-time job. So I was, at one point I was driving, so we would take turns. We wouldn't do the school runs, but we would drop, the boys off at daycare and then make sure we picked them up after our work days. And so there was all of this typical shuffling back and forth, and all of a sudden that all stopped. And so I couldn't drive. I had to stop working. And all of a sudden I wasn't out in life the way I'd always been used to. So it was a massive, massive change as a family, but for all of us, it was kind of like suddenly I was going from everything I'd been used to doing for years to being at home. I mean, I'd always wanted to be at home helping raise the kids. But most of us, we have to be a 2-income family. So that wasn't the way I wanted it to happen. And so, here I was, yes, at home, but I couldn't walk, the quarter mile to the kids' school when there was parent-teacher events. That was, yes, we'd have to go together because my husband would have to push me or drive us there. And so it was one of those things where I felt for a while I couldn't do any of the housework, and I couldn't do the cleaning or the cooking. And so part of it for me, I think, was good because I was forced to sort of go, yeah, I'm not in control. And it's actually not a bad thing to have to delegate to other people. And they were happy to jump in. It's just, I was like, no, I want it done right. I'm going to do it myself. And I had to start learning to say, actually, I can't do this. I need your help here. And, and my husband and the boys were brilliant about that. But that was a whole mindset switch for me. And I, getting my identity of, well, I work full time. There's part of the identity. Or mom, I'm in charge of the homework. I help with the shopping, whatever it is. And all of a sudden I'm still mom, but I can't do those things. And so that took quite a time to get through that phase. And especially with the fact that, well, a couple of things. So one, I had the symptoms a month after I had my disc prolapse in my lumbar area. And so within a month, I'm already having symptoms, but it took them a year and a half before they finally made a diagnosis. So all they kept telling me was, well, we don't know what it is. Okay, well, you're the doctor, could you be more specific? Could you tell me is it going to get better? Is it going to go away? Like, why is there all this pain? And there's such a range of possible options. Like, well, it's because you're in your 40s. Oh, it's because you've had kids, repetitive motion, or maybe because you fell a few times, I've had a couple of bad falls as a kid, just winters in Canada. Fell down a flight of stairs once and fractured my tailbone, all this stuff. So they're saying it was a buildup of this, or maybe it's because you have 6 vertebrae in your lumbar area instead of 5. Maybe that's what made it shift. You don't know. And I just remember thinking, well, if you don't know, what am I supposed to do? If you don't know, where does that leave me? Right? And so, we tried all kinds of things. I did physiotherapy, did hydrotherapy, had occupational health out, and they were all fantastic and they were lovely. But the challenges that, as I came to learn about fibromyalgia, is that some of those things work some degree for some people. But because it's widespread soft tissue pain and it comes and goes and it can be anywhere at any time, most of those things don't work or have very limited success. And so I was also at the point of, well, I've tried everything that the NHS can recommend, I've done, and none of it has helped. So I reached the point where I'm like, I don't even know why I'm bothering to go see the GP anymore. Just keep my prescriptions going, because I've tried all these other things and nothing has made any difference. And I got to the point of, I lost a lot of interest in just everyday things. I mean, I lost that focus anyways with the brain fog. But, when I first had to stop working, I thought, great, I can sit home, I can watch Netflix all day, which sounds great for a couple of days, right? But then boredom sits in, and it's kind of like you go from all your day on the sofa to all day in bed and not much in between. And so there I was, not able to do work, and yet not much else was going on. And so very long days, long stretches of just me in the house. And we've always had dogs here, which has been fabulous, but you can only converse with your dog for so long, and then you miss that human interaction after a while. So that was, I think, the greatest improvement that I noticed, getting my mind back and starting to have energy and a desire to actually get out and do something and be a part of life again, because I kind of just checked out for a lot of years because that's all I could do at that point. So yeah, that's probably the biggest change.
Yeah, it's very sad to lose that amount of life. I mean, I really wish I'd discovered low carb, not as late as 50, but I did. And, carnivore at 55, and here I am at 60 thinking, well, yeah, but I've still had 10 good years with low carb and carnivore for 5. So it's interesting, isn't it, that when I started coaching 15 years ago, I would have been so excited to talk to you because you lost 100 pounds, right? That is not how I think now. That almost is a side effect, as we've seen from the way you're talking. You threw it in there. It wasn't the be all and end all, and fibromyalgia being most significant. And then I'm assuming you were also told that there's not much you could do about hypothyroidism. I mean, what was happening with your thyroid, and what were the symptoms?
So I wondered back in around 2016 if there was more going on than just the fact that I was gaining weight, because I had always had cold hands and cold feet, always. Now, I also had Raynaud's at that time. I was diagnosed with Raynaud's at the time. And when I tried to explain to my GP, no, it's my whole body is always cold. It could be June, it could be 18 degrees, but I would feel the need to put on a jumper, right? And I knew that wasn't normal. And his response was always, yeah, but your TSH is fine. So don't worry about your thyroid. I'm sure it's nothing. So then there's me after finally battling to get a diagnosis of fibromyalgia. I'm like, right, you're a lovely person, but I'm looking into this on my own because I know something else is going on. My eyebrows thinned out. I was losing eyelashes. My skin was always really, really dry and flaky. And I couldn't control my own body temperature. I was always cold, always. And my weight was just creeping up. I wasn't so much in the binge phase of bulimia at that point. It was more doing a lot of restricting. There was a bit of binging, not so much the purging, but it didn't happen all the time. It was more the mentality of an eating disorder that I was dealing with. And I kept insisting. So I went to Thyroid UK and checked out what all the symptoms were. And I'm like, I've got all of these, like all of them, maybe except for 5 things. I'm like, something's going on. And I had to push my GP to do a full blood panel. I'm like, wait, please don't just test the TSH. Could you please check for the T3s and at least the T4, see what's going on? Okay, fine. And I think it's just because I kept going and I refused to accept that everything was okay. He gave in and he's like, fine, we'll do a blood test. As of 2017, my T4s were abnormally low. TSH was fine. The T4s were abnormally low. And I asked him, I said, right, so isn't that a problem? No. It's probably your medication. Really? Yeah. Your antidepressants. Don't worry about it. And of course, when someone tells me don't worry, I typically worry. So, right, well, can we chase this up? Can we please look into this? So 2017, 2018, same thing. They didn't want to do anything about it. 2019, I got the blood work done, high cholesterol and low HDL, but super high triglycerides, on top of which they also showed abnormally low T4. And it was the lipid specialist who said, yeah, you have subclinical hypothyroidism. What does that mean? Well, it's just under abnormally low levels. So most doctors would just ignore it. But given everything else you're dealing with and the fact your weight's crept up, She's like, what was your weight when you saw your doctor in October of 2019? It was about 150. Right. Well, when you came in and got weighed today, you're at 175, which is a lot. That's a very short amount of time. Have you eaten a whole lot more? No. Have you changed your diet in that time? No. Thyroidism. So I'm going to ask your GP to start you on levothyroxine. I'm like, okay. Anything else? She goes, yeah, don't eat so much fruit and try to avoid sugar or cut back on it. Anything else? No, that's it. So I took the medications. At that point, I stayed on them for a while because I thought, well, they may have had the diet wrong and the nutrition they didn't quite get right, but surely there's a reason for me to be on the medication. So I'll just keep taking the medication, which I did. And when I was coming off all the other ones last year, the thyroid medication, I stopped taking it. It was kind of by accident because I was running out of my monthly prescription and I forgot to order more. And by the time I remembered to order another batch, I had already been off of it for a week and I hadn't noticed any difference. So I thought, well, I guess I'm fine. So I haven't taken any thyroid medications since that time. The last blood work I had in 2021 showed that my thyroid levels were back up within a normal range. So, you know, not overly concerned about that. But yeah, it was one of those things where I had to, I don't know, it's kind of like, I know that a lot of GPs, when you come in and say, hey, I looked this up on Google, they roll their eyes, which I get because, you know, you do get patients who can be hypochondriacs. On the other hand, I'm like, look, you guys have checked this every year for the past 4 years. My T4s are still showing up normally low. Can we please look into this? And so there was that part of me that was like, you know what? I'm going to push this because I know something's wrong. If I didn't have, you know, the eyebrows coming out and losing my eyelashes and my hair thinning and my nails were all cracked and peeling and just those typical signs, if I didn't have any of that, I probably would have ignored it. But I had all those things going on. So I'm like, look, something's wrong. So can we please investigate a little bit further? And then I just pushed it that way. But yeah, I mean, ever since going carnivore, not an issue. No, thyroid's functioning just beautifully. No issues with my metabolism. When I avoid the stuff I know I have to, my IBS, I have no flare-ups. So the gut is doing well. Yeah, and I've been weight stable since 2020, which I've never had my entire life. It's always been up, down, and all over the place. So that tells me I think I'm doing all right as far as the thyroid goes.
Yeah, I think you're doing all right as well. I'm definitely with you on the dairy being problematic because I miss dairy. I do add it every so often, but exactly what you say about coffee. If I add coffee, that's not good. But that's both the coffee and the dairy, from my point of view. But when you started to realize that you were now healthy and everything was reversing, I noticed you call yourself Meghan, the healing foods coach. Did you set up a coaching system for other people in similar situations then?
Yeah, I did actually. So I was so amazed last year at all the improvements I'd been noticing. And I'd had my YouTube channel up for a while. It was under a slightly different handle, but I wanted to be able to, and everyone kept asking me like, oh, you should coach. Oh, help me. And how did you do it? And all this sort of thing. But I realized a lot of people won't come to us if we don't have some sort of certification. And so I did go back and I did get my nutritional coaching certification, which I just completed in April this year. And at that point, I was like, okay, I'm here. I'm open. I'm open for business. I'm helping people try to reach that point. And there are some who will ask me, so what kind of nutrition? I said, well, look, if you want to do animal based, I'll be there and I'll help you. If you want anything else, I'm sorry. I'm not the person to ask because I cannot in good conscience recommend it. Like, okay. So yeah, it's been really helpful because I found so much health and healing by eating this way. I'm like, I want to be able to share it with other people, you know, whether it's just content or an actual coaching session, but yeah, trying to help people as much as possible.
Well, it's very
Absolutely.
inspirational. Yeah,
Thank
it's
you.
great. very inspirational. And I mean, being in a wheelchair for 9 years, one of the things you touched on is something that comes up at least once a month in conversations I have with these success stories, is how your world shrinks. That's the thing. I had a vivid description by one lady. She said, "Do you know, I used to just walk down to the end of the garden, think nothing of it, and I'd walk down to the post office, and it would just be not even something I appreciated. And now I'm in my lounge, and everything's just closing in, and all I can see is my neighbour's front garden. And it's things like that where you think, wow, just proper nutrition, eating the right things, and not eating the wrong things can make
Mhm.
such a huge difference. It's incredible, isn't it?
It is. And it's still, even 4 years in, it still shocks me sometimes how many things we thought were good for us, and they were the worst things. Like, I mean, when I spoke to the lipid specialist, and even thinking back on it after starting on carnivore, is just, but I ate the whole wheat toast with peanut butter and bananas, or oatmeal with fruit. And I had, all the veggies and all the stuff and the margarine and all these things. And you just think, now I know better, now that you know the real truth, it's like, actually, no, those things are horrible and not fit for human consumption, truly. But it's amazing how much we didn't know until we knew what was true. And
Hmm.
I initially, I used to get so angry at the medical people and be like, how could you not know this? Why would you not tell me about nutrition and da da da? And of course, now I realize, well, because that's not what they're told. Like, when I was doing my course, and you have to answer, obviously, if you want to complete it, you got to give the answers they're expecting. But they're asking for answers like, how much of your diet should come from carbohydrates? Well, their answers are still, which is shocking to me, 55% need to come from carbohydrates, 45 from starchy carbs. And I'm just like, no,
No.
no, it's not true. It's so wrong. I'm like, okay, I'll give you the answer you're looking for, because I'm hoping maybe there'll be enough of us we can start changing things, from inside the system. But I remember being told that at one point by a nurse practitioner who was doing my bloods, this just before I went carnivore. And she was also overweight. And I'm like, oh, she was like, okay, so we're going to do your blood work, and we're going to check on the cholesterol. Statins will help. And I said, yeah, I was never told about nutrition. She goes, yeah, no, as long as you're eating from all the rainbow and a little bit of everything. She's like, that's all, that's what you should do. That's what the doctors would recommend. And that's what I would suggest. That's what I'm doing. And I just, even then thinking, but it's not working for either one of us. So why,
Mm.
why do we continue on with it
Yeah.
when clearly it's not helping anybody? But yeah, it's just,
But
it's
that's
crazy.
the way of the world. I mean, I even with my physiology and health sciences honors degree, I had to answer things in a way that would get my tutor market assessment the right marks. But anyway, we won't get into that because that's really bad. So if someone is on the fence about this way of eating, and you had to give them one little bit of wisdom, some sort of advice, what would you give them?
The first thing I would say to them is like, look, whether you want to be full carnivore or not, obviously respect your choice, but please, if nothing else, get rid of the processed garbage. Get out the processed sugars, get out the junk food, eliminate the seed oils. Because even when you do just that, you can already start to feel better. If you want to debate the merits of other ways of eating, that's fine, but at least get out the processed stuff, because it does nobody any good. The way I think of it is, if it's in a package, if it has a barcode, if it has a shelf life, you probably shouldn't be eating it, because
Mm,
it's all the
brilliant.
nutrients have been processed out of it. Like, it's not going to help you. So
That's
start there.
brilliant. And it's so simple, isn't it, Megan? It's so simple. And then, as you pointed out, as you went through the journey of taking out the processed food, then you realized it was the plants, and then you thought dairy. This is it. We have to be open minded and listen to our body, because you might not have to take out dairy. You might be all right leaving some plants in, but at least be open to the fact that they might be the problem. Because I tell you what, it's never the meat. It's never the
No,
meat is a problem. Yeah. So
there's
I'm gonna. Yeah. Sorry, you were gonna say.
no, no. I was just going to say, there's somebody I heard once out. She follows keto, and her saying is, and I love it. She goes, "Don't blame the butter for what the bread did to you."
Yeah.
And it's kind of the
Yeah.
same thing. We can't get mad at the meat for what all the processed garbage has done to our bodies. So, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, well, it's true, isn't it? So I'm going to wrap the interview up now. And if you could just humor me for 20 seconds while I just point to this video up here, which you should watch next, or you could
Sure.
subscribe. And Meghan's the Healing Food coach, all of the links, all of the links are down in the description. So you don't have to email me for the links. They're definitely in the description, I promise you. And I just want to say again, Meghan, thank you for coming on.
Oh, thank you.